interrupt. So we know, because I can't see you, which is fine. All right, I'm going to turn off the transcription. That's so annoying. All right. Hello, everybody. This is, what number is this? 4 or 5? I don't even know. It's March 21st, so that's exciting. Next week is spring break. The sun is out here in Ohio, which is rare. So welcome, everyone. I dropped into the chat the prompt for today, just in case that was helpful. And we have some folks joining us visually, and then a few others joining us auditorily, if that's the correct way to say that. So today's conversation is prevention. And so thinking about, and I'm just looking at this, that over 85% of our healthcare costs and 75% of our deaths, and I think, frankly, those two numbers could be updated and increased, in the United States are consequences of preventable health issues. Lifestyle choices and health behaviors are the most important health concern in this regard. So our conversation today is based around, why do we think it's so difficult to get folks to take preventative care? And this conversation obviously is so much more interesting now, given our pandemic couple of years, right? But I have sunscreen, seatbelts, helmets, condoms, healthy eating, physical activity, sleep, whatever. And then we could also talk about what areas are we doing well with in regard to prevention, or what areas do we still need to work on? So I'm just going to leave it at that. What do y'all think? Yeah,
talk?
Nelly. Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
So I've been in 9 years. So my last job was 9 years working for the breast and cervical cancer program, also for colon cancer program.
Nice.
As we know, there are preventive diseases if we do the screening every year. And my experience of what I saw for the 9 years, even before and after the Obamacare, one of the barriers that we can see on the communities, on the all individuals, is the lack of the not have insurance. That's one a huge issue that we face it in reality with the communities. So also the lack of sometimes the lack of the language, or another barrier is the lack of the health information or the health education. So they have too many they things that are, for instance, when they wanna do the colon screening, so I wanna go do anesthesia, so I can die during the anesthesia. And all the preparation day is something that I can manage because I will be sick for days.
Right.
Yes,
One of my mother-in-laws won't go for her colonoscopy for that reason. I'm like, well, colorectal cancer is pretty terrible, and the
it is
colonoscopy is actually a really
safe
nice
times.
save. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also happen with the pap smear or the mammograms, you face with people they don't have the literature to know that what is the prevention and why it's so important to do every year a mammogram in order to prevent it. And basically, I think that in the case that I can say, the lack of don't have insurance is a huge
Sure.
problem that we face today.
Yeah. Well, and I think the American response to that is just a little bit different in that we all generally have some access, right? And our healthcare, I'm going to put in air quotes because that was part of my addition to the conversation, right? That does it really take care of our health, or is it really preventative in nature, right? But technically, our preventative screening should be covered and free for all Americans. But that doesn't mean, even when we have it, Nellie, like you said, some of us just don't want to tolerate the prep or go through the procedure, and I don't know, I'm at that colonoscopy age, and I understand no one likes to clean out their colon, but I imagine that colon cancer, when we still have to eat and move our bowel, is a much worse predicament. But
Yes.
how about the rest of y'all? How might you add or?
I think like the pap smear thing was a really good point. Like a lot of people don't want to go do that because it's uncomfortable, and like men don't have to do it, so women are kind of like, this sucks, but
Yeah. Well,
everyone
but
needs
folks
to
with
do that.
penises have their own version, right? And at least in
Yeah,
my human sexuality class, I talk about
yeah,
testicular exams. It's like anybody is capable of getting breast
yeah,
cancer. And technically, those of us with ovaries are a little bit more at risk, but those
yeah,
of us with testes really should be thinking about testicular cancer, which is most common among 18 to 25-year-olds, right? Which we don't usually think about. But no, my spouse gave me a hard time about his rectal exam. And I said, well, first of all, you could have been health literate and talked with your doctor about doing a blood test before being penetrated. But second of all, I'm not interested in your my body was invaded conversation, because those of us with vaginas are,
right.
you know, every year, every orifice, like, stop.
Obviously, like, another thing too is like getting vaccinated, and not just for COVID, but there's people in this world that don't want to get vaccinated for anything. And
right. And here we're talking HPV, right? Which Nellie brought up as well. I mean, human papilloma vaccination, granted, some of our traditional age students might be young enough that your parents made these decisions for you. But still, you know, most of our vaginal, cervical, uterine, penile, anal, rectal, and now oral pharyngeal cancers are because of HPV, and people don't think about that. Anyways, but I can understand a little bit of the, you know, when you bring up COVID, and I volunteered for the vaccine trial because I was so desperate to get out of my dining room, even though I'm not someone that even gets a flu vaccine usually. But I do appreciate a little bit of, I don't want to say go all the way and say vaccine hesitancy, but I do think we should be thoughtful about what the government or the medical establishment might be encouraging us to put into our bodies, right?
I feel like a lot of it has to do with like preventing it within yourself, but also preventing it with other people too, because like getting vaccinated isn't just like for yourself.
Thanks for that, Jacqueline. And that's what I learned about the flu shot, right? I used to joke, like, a couple of days of not eating and maybe getting sick, it's like a diet vacation, you know? But if I kill my neighbor in the process, like, rudeness, right? So COVID has taught me a little bit more about thinking about other people as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so money, uncomfortability, not wanting to trust. Colin or Esther, you want to add other things to that, Liz?
I was just thinking like awareness. Like I think for me, like I've always grown up getting vaccines or, you know, and made aware of like different health issues. But I think especially in like impoverished communities, like there's not always that like great education system that can help people know like, hey, these are things that can impact your body at this young of an age. And like I think sometimes people can just write off like, you know, having certain feelings or, you know, things going on in their body that they're like, oh, this is normal, I just live with this, and not really acknowledging like, oh, there might be a deeper health concern here.
Yeah, denial can be pretty powerful, right? And then kind of some of these things that we were talking about, if we overlook or deny or ignore, then often, and like Nellie said, and granted, maybe I'm the only old person in the room, but at, you know, female identified folks, by the time we have symptoms, our colon cancer is at stage 4. And so male identified folks have a little bit more warning for that, but missing my colonoscopy is likely to be far more risky than, you know, a equally aged male for that, in that regard. So
may I build off of what y'all was saying?
Please do, yeah.
So when talking about impoverished people, well, first I think I agree with I can't really see nobody's names, but I agree with who was just talking
Colin.
About awareness. I agree with that, and also just the promotion of not, you know, taking certain health precautions. You know, especially in impoverished communities, there's a lot of times where it's actually promoted to, you know what I'm saying, do things that is unsafe or unhealthy. More along the lines, you always have somebody that you know who, you know what I'm saying, has a fairly long life without taking those health precautions, which kind of makes you think like if they don't need it, like, you know what I'm saying, you have an alcoholic and all this other stuff that you know personally who doesn't take these health precautions, who's still alive and kicking, it kind of makes you more hesitant to feel the need to take those health precautions.
Sure.
So yeah, that's just what I want to say.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I grew up poor. And so medical insurance, dental is the big one, right? Even now dental insurance I think is all lousy, But now I have a pretty privileged space as a faculty person, but I still don't go to the dentist because my poor little girl brain is like, well, the dentist costs money and it's really, my teeth are fine. And I have to like force myself to get in that habit because growing up, you went to the hospital before you died. Right. And there are even times where I broke bones and my mom was like, you're fine. And part of that, I think, was the denial that Colin was talking about. And also her like, how the heck am I going to pay for this? Because she was barely, keeping our roof over our head. And so I know better by now and should not still be blaming my parents or my childhood. But there's still this ingrained like, no, Lori, people should go to the dentist regularly, right? And kind of related to Colin, it might just be a cavity, but cavities can go to your heart really quickly and actually kill you if you're not careful. And so, yeah, I think there's both. And I don't want to frame it for you, but also, I think sometimes there's those rationalizations, right? Like my mom saying you're fine wasn't because she thought believing it could make it so. I mean, she did have her own struggles with mental health, but I think it was more the poverty of the like, oh my gosh, I can't miss work to do this. And maybe she is just fine. And then we had to deal with the like, no, not fine kinds of situations. But
Okay, I just want to add on to something. Okay, this is Jane Onya.
yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm a nurse in mental health. So
There you
it
go.
was so interesting. I'm doing like my clinicals, and one of the patients walks in and you can tell something is up. Like, so the nurse practitioner asked him if he's taking his medication. He was like, no, I'm not taking medication because I went to pick it up from the pharmacy and the pharmacist told me that this medication would make my blood sugar go up. So I did not take it. He didn't refill his medication. So some of these things, like even when we're prescribing medications, I just feel like, like health literacy, like just explain to, your patients, like, hey, these are the benefits, or, like, I mean, they take people's words so like literally, like, oh, he was told by a pharmacist, so it's just like, yeah.
Well, and it might be a good reason to be thoughtful about it, but maybe talk with your doctor because, a lot of times those cholesterol meds or even, I'm not sure what kind of, well, you said mental health medication, right? So some kind of psychotropic drug might raise your blood sugar, but not enough that you need to worry about diabetes.
So,
or then maybe there's some other med that helps.
But when I asked him, what's your blood sugar? How high does it go? He doesn't even check his blood sugar.
It was just an excuse.
Yeah. Just education. Yeah.
Sure. So some of you do have medical careers already, so that brings it to an extra level. But what about even the, just the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't love sunscreen. It's annoying. You have to keep putting it on, right? I think sometimes also we view, especially when we're younger, we view some of the prevention stuff as like taking all the fun out of the situation. Do you think that plays in a little bit? Like, I think about that. I understand why no one wants to wear a motorcycle helmet. It's way more like free to have your hair blow as long as you don't hit the pavement. Right? Like, right? Aren't we? I mean, with our prevention things, usually it's like we're fine until we're not fine. And then how not fine do we get in that regard, And we could say that about anything, wearing masks, wearing condoms, wearing sunscreen, wearing helmets, wearing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's a certain level of allure when it comes to doing stuff that you're not supposed to do. It's that hint of danger that makes certain stuff exciting. Some people feel the most alive when they're the closest to death type of thing.
Right.
And then on top of that, it just also just seems tedious. Like for me, as being a Black person, I don't see the value of me putting on sunscreen, just considering melanin in my skin is supposed to be, the originator of stuff like that. So certain stuff just seems tedious, and I think also also because of overconfidence, perhaps, in certain things. Like for example, when it comes to, putting a condom on. Every guy feel like they can pull out whatever. You know what I'm saying? Until it come that point where they don't,
Right.
But unfortunately, the human race, we have a lot of different negative aspects about us, and one of those things is kind of like arrogance. So, but yeah.
Sure. And I think some of that too is about meeting people where they are, right? I mean, if we stay just for a second with condoms, I know that sexuality educators, not the good ones, but often will sort of lie about, well, it doesn't interfere with, and it's like, really? Even during COVID when we were all, well, we're still in COVID, right? But the masks, the people who were like, it's the same. It's like, it is not the same. Like, you need to stop lying to people. We need to stop saying that the prevention really isn't that big of a deal, because it kind of is. And if we don't work towards making those preventative things more doable, more feasible, right, more appreciated, then folks are never going to do the things, right? At the graduate level, we have this article that we all talk about our health educators, warriors against pleasure. Aren't we trying to take all the fun out of everything? And it's like, well, on a bad day, maybe I feel that way. Maybe I am the wet blanket that's like, you've had enough shots, and put on your seatbelt before we move. And, please wash your hands and go to bed and all of those things. But we do have a responsibility, or let me reframe that. We have an opportunity to prolong our years of healthy life, right? And to reduce our years of disability, and to really, in the United States of America, I use my old school, like Ghostbusters, where he said, choose your destructor, right? I mean, we have a quality of life that for most of us, we do choose what ultimately kills us, right? We choose not to eat healthy, or not to sleep appropriately, or not to take care of our hearts or our brains or our lungs or our skins or our safety. And so ultimately, we're signing up for our cause of death. And my spouse is about to turn 50, and the joke in our house is it's only a matter of time before we figure out what's going to kill us, but we do that actually with some humor, and with some autonomy of, we are turning 50. There's still a decent amount of life left. What do we still have an opportunity to get a hold of and help prevent from getting really terrible? And what has already flown the coop, So I think I've already shared with you all, last year for his birthday, he quit chewing tobacco, which he had done since he was 13 years old. And so now for his 50th birthday, he will be celebrating 1 year of sobriety from nicotine. And is that a thing? Of being nicotine free in a way that has improved, after only a few years, when we walk away from nicotine products, we attain a health status as if we never used it to begin with. And that's pretty serious. So, and he did that on his own. I had nothing to do with that. So
that's great, because it's interesting. On the other side of that spectrum, I have an uncle who was in the military, smoked for 30 or 40 years, and then unfortunately got lung cancer. And it's like, there's no point of return at that point, because it's been a 30-40 year buildup where even the people around him, they've become more aware, quit smoking, and are like, hey, you should probably get on this. And now it's like too little too late. But it's just interesting, because I don't know, it's just crazy.
Well, and I don't mean, first of all, I'm sorry for that, Colin. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, right? I mean, one of the things that we mess up in our culture is addictive substances, and we tend to downplay nicotine, when really
Right.
in most circles, it should be in the same circles as heroin and methamphetamine, which we understand that level of addiction, right? And so sometimes we put those nicotine users in a, just stop, quit being lazy, when in fact, it's actually a huge deal. So I mean, it is as much as we could get in front of things, right? And at the same time, I appreciate that young people don't see their death, right? I mean, there's something to being young and free and feeling all of that life. and not really realizing, I was watching something this weekend and I'm going to botch it, but it was something like it's later than you think, was the saying that someone said. And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, going on 50 now. I'm like, it's like time goes so fast. Life goes so fast. Health can go so fast. So as health coaches, how do we help folks?
Well, I think too, when I hearing this topic, my mind immediately went to nutrition, because I think that that's a huge issue. Is like, obviously we have so much fast food, so much processed food, so much stuff around us that like it's more appealing and more attractive to go and have a burger from McDonald's, and even
And
just
we don't
how much.
take you are what you eat seriously, right, Colin? It's like whatever is in that is literally what you're building your body out of. And is that McDonald's cheeseburger really what we want to be made out of?
Right. No, right.
Right?
And I think it's so crazy because it's like, it's the same as like a car. Like, I know that's always kind of thrown around in nutrition, but it's like, what are you filling your body with?
I think it's worse, right? Because the car is
Yeah,
just the fuel. That's just what's
right.
going to light the fire in my whatever part of the engine, versus that cheeseburger that literally becomes the macro and micronutrients that my body is building, my brain, my neurotransmitter. I think it's way more detail, right?
Right. And I
Yeah.
think in a lot of these areas that like we're talking about with like, you know, even if it is like nicotine or drug use or alcohol or something like that, it's like I think that the narrative that is always kind of pushed is, hey, you need to go cold turkey, never do this
Mm.
again. And I think especially in the realm of nutrition, it's like I don't think you need to start like eating salads, like purely salads, become vegetarian or vegan, because also those kind of dietary habits
Mhm.
have their own things that aren't great. But
Right.
um, but I think it's making minor adjustments to like that's the narrative that needs to be seen or pushed is, hey, you don't necessarily need to cut out McDonald's burgers completely. Let's maybe limit it to once a week rather than every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah,
here's
to build
where,
off of that.
go ahead.
I was just thinking to build off that. I think one of the most important things in life is like balance, and balance comes with everything that you do. So just like you were saying, you don't need to necessarily cut it out or go cold turkey. It's just being aware that too much of anything is bad for you. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And obviously, I think as health coaches, that's what we can kind of like bring is like help people be more balanced by including, what I'm saying, the positives and negatives of both aspects. You know what I'm saying? Just making sure people don't become one sided, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Well, and I think I would hope too we keep our health literacy in there, right? With everything that we know about health behavior theory. And so if you ask me to turn off everything that feels good, that's fun, that's easy, that makes me feel decent, and you try to ask us each to conform to this, what can sometimes seem like sterile, bubble wrapped environment, like, what's the point? Right? Like, where is the fun? And what is, one of my frustrations in the past few years with this pandemic has been the lack of health education specialists in this space where we really look at risk assessment, right? So we're not the anti everything fun and risky and sexy and dangerous, but it's all about let's assess the risk of that, right? Like I would jump out of an airplane, but I wouldn't bungee jump because to me, those are two totally different things. And the ability for my body to react and respond to a slow fall with a parachute and probably someone that knows what they're doing tied to my back versus the jarring of a, right? And what is my risk ratio? So is it always necessary to have sex with a condom? No, but what are the circumstances under which that's safe, right? Is it always dangerous to eat? And Colin, oh my gosh, if you're into nutrition, these fast food places have lost their minds, right? Have you seen the like menu at McDonald's. I think we've talked about this already, where it's like the earth, land, and sea thing. I'm like, that person should just go away. There are things that probably we should never do to our bodies, right? But at the same time, you can totally eat that and still not have a heart attack, not have cholesterol, not have blood sugar, not fall over dead. But like we're saying, where's the moderation in there? I had my nieces at the zoo this summer and I wasn't paying attention. I'm just an aunt. It doesn't occur to me. I do it for my dogs, though. I'm a good dog mom. And we were driving home and I was getting hangry and I really wanted that Sbarro's pizza slice and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, if I don't pull over now and just get us some food, there's going to be a problem. And these kids were raised by my girlfriend, who is the best. They've never had anything. They don't know the fast food menu. So I just had to hand them the phone and say, here's the McDonald's app, pick something. And they picked stuff. And I said, you don't want any fries? My little Viv, who's only 8 years old, said, Lauralee, I already had French fries once today. And I was like, oh, okay, good catch. Sorry. Get the apple slices or whatever is healthy at McDonald's that you should be eating, right? Because I just wasn't thinking. But here, actually, she's 9 years old. Her little 9-year-old self had been taught to pay attention to what you eat throughout the day because you haven't really had any protein. So what can we get at McDonald's that has protein and not those little carbs, right? So not those little carbs, those carbs in her little body, where I'm like, just get some French fries and let's go, right? But how amazing for them to already know at that young age how to help pay attention to what they're eating during a day and make sure they're getting their balance, which is good. Other issues with prevention that we want to highlight? So it costs us time, energy, money. It takes some of the fun out. We do have different, not super health supportive attitudes, right? There can be some noise, either from the people that were fine. My spouse used to argue that his great grandmother lived to be 98 and chewed tobacco till the day she died. And I was like, all right, I don't think death is the only problem. I think you could lose your teeth or your jaw or part of your face or your voice. Like there are other things that are maybe worse than death. So taking the fun out, taking the pleasure out, having to do the work. I think self-control is maybe something we don't give enough energy to. The idea that self-determination actually is a skill that needs practiced and refined. And, you think about there's ad campaigns like you can't just eat one Pringle. And it's like, well, you can, but who does? And so then how do we learn how many Pringles we're supposed to eat? Kind of like Colin said, do we even bother reading the label? Do we just eat the whole tube? Oh, I wasn't sure. Jacqueline, were you speaking?
Oh, no, my computer just died. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just could hear, so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't talking over you. So as health coaches, then we do want to, because we're up at our end here, we do want to make sure that we are meeting people where they're at, right? This is one reason why we ask a lot more questions than we give advice. So if someone wants to eat healthier or move more or be safer with something, we have to ask, so what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? And then you might get that person Colin's talking about that's like, well, I know I need to stop eating fast food and give up meat and give up sugar and give up bread and give up. And my spouse will do that sometimes too. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. One thing at a time, right? Because here again, in my trans-theoretical model, my version where I have that cue to action, I also often also talk about that planning for relapse, right? So that if I am trying to quit smoking, but I have that cigarette, I don't just say like, oh, okay, I guess I suck at that, I'll keep smoking. In the same way that if I were for some reason to smoke a cigarette today, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm a smoker now. What else do I need? I better go get ashtrays and like more things to promote my smoking lifestyle. I would just see that as, whoops, had a cigarette, I guess I'll move on with my life. In the same way, if we're trying to eat healthy, people will be like, oh, but then I cheated on my diet, I failed, so now I'm back to my regular. And it's like, that was just a one-time choice. You don't have to continue down that path. Every single health behavior choice we make is an opportunity for a choice. And again, I don't want to be disrespectful of the fact that some of our choices are complicated by poverty and ignorance and fear and real life limitations. That's that part of the theory of reasoned action plan behavior, right? Can I actually control my opportunities and my resources is a really fair question. So if we just see where people are and see what they think are the appropriate steps they need to take to make more health positive preventative actions, then we can usually help meet them where they are and help move them just slightly. So, all right, any last thoughts before I end our recording?
I know I haven't talked much because I mean, everything
That's
that I
okay.
kind of wanted to say is was kind of addressed, and I agree with everything. One of the last important things that I thought about was just kind of knowing that what we said, that you are kind of in control of your many choices that you can make, and just kind of focusing on maybe perceiving these things as more positive, just like as a positive thing, like, oh, I will do this for myself, and then it's better for me in the long run. And even if they are uncomfortable, preventative.
Temporarily, right?
Yes.
Yeah, temporarily. And there, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes my jokes get a little inappropriate, right? Like that condom is uncomfortable, but so is pushing a 10-pound baby out of your vagina, right? Or not sleeping for 3 weeks because the kid is sick, or becoming a parent before you're really ready or capable, right? And so, yeah, that risk adjustment and that risk reward ratio, I think, is a important piece. All right, well, I'm going to stop our recording for today. So thank you all for your participation.